Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for attending to our first Q&A Zoom meeting for the winter 2023 class for the PDC Pro. Happy to have you all join me today, and we are going to review a few things. We're going to start with just taking a look at the Canvas platform and give you a quick tutorial on that. And then we'll take a look at lesson number 1, which is pretty straightforward. And I noticed a few folks had placed some questions on our Google document sheet. So we'll take a look at that as well. And I'll try and keep my voice. Thank you very much for your patience last couple of days. It's taken me a few days to get back to normal here. So again, I appreciate your patience and flexibility for meeting today. So let's just get our screen shared here. There we go. And we'll take a quick tour of the Canvas platform here, and just might help a few of you. I know when I first started instructing for OSU, it took me a couple of years to get used to this platform. Did not seem really intuitive to myself, but again, once you know something and have worked with it for a little while, it's not so bad. All right, so let's take a look at the platform, and of course, this is what I'm seeing when I entered Jamie's group here. You may be seeing something slightly different, but just to let you know, what I usually do is I will pin certain discussion boards at the top here for easy access. So the top one here is for general health questions. So if you're, in the middle of your lesson and you're having any challenges, you can pop a question there. I regularly check on that. Thank you very much, Anthony. I just opened the chat here, and I want to thank numerous people for sending their best wishes when I was feeling a little bit under the weather. So I really appreciate that. Let's get back to where I was. So yes, we have some pinned discussion boards here. So again, the help discussion board is a great place for general questions, right? And you can see I keep my eye on it and answer those as quickly as I can. If we go back here by just clicking on this discussion tab at the top, we'll get all of the discussion boards. So we have an open thread if somebody wants to chat about anything permaculture related with other classmates. Please feel free to do so on that discussion board. There's our Q&A Zoom meeting recording. So all of the recordings are going to be here. As well as there's a link to our Google document for our questions during the meeting, and the link for the Zoom meeting here. And of course, there's no recordings yet, but there will be. I usually post the recording within a few hours of the conclusion of the meeting. So that is a good resource. Now, the other resource where you can find these Zoom meetings would be on my YouTube channel, and you can go back into other classes there too if you wish to do so. All right, so again, we've got that lesson 1, the introduction. So thank you very much for everybody who has chimed in here. You can see I've got 3 people I haven't responded to. Just to let you know, if you're regularly chiming into a discussion board and you want to just see what the new discussions are, you'll see up in the corner here. Just get my annotation tool working here. There's 56 comments and 3 I haven't seen. So if I just hit the unread button, boom, I'll get the ones that I haven't seen. And you can see I haven't responded, so I will be doing that later today. Thank you for your patience on that. And we'll just try and get to the top here. So even though it may feel a little bit convoluted, the discussion boards are really where we're going to place all of our lessons. Okay, so when you've done lesson 1, you'll want to click on that, and you'll see that at the beginning of each lesson, we'll have a little bit of information on that. You have the PDC Pro template file that you can click there, which we are going to do that, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. You also have a number of tabs here. So we have different components that are in that first lesson. So we want to look at your personal survey, a little bit about your design site, and then a climate survey. So those are the 3 main components. And there's some good info below each one here. And if you're having it, because it does happen, if you are having challenges picking a design site, make sure you read this document here. It's quite valuable. There's kind of a point by point on some of the things that you would want to look out for. So you want to be able to visit your site regularly. There's no point in trying to choose a design site that you can't access, because site observation is a really big part of the permaculture design process. I've got to be able to dig holes there. Or when we get to lesson number 6, we're looking at soils and soil infiltration. You want to have at least one building, and it's okay if you don't. If there's, we do get students who have recently purchased properties and there's no building on it, no problem. What we do in that case is just recommend that you place a proposed building on your site plan. So that's easy to work around. You want to be able to communicate with the owner. And you'll certainly see that in lesson 2 when we start looking at this client survey. We want the possibility of implementation, but the reality is most of you will be just learning this for the first time, and you may not really feel comfortable having your first design implemented, and I totally get that. I've been designing landscapes for, well, probably over 26 years, and it is a long process in order to learn not only permaculture design, but some of the traditional land design elements. So it does take a while. And if we were to look at my first designs, it would be today, it would be quite eye-opening. So again, be patient with yourself and don't worry too much about that. If you can implement part of your design, that's fantastic, because one of the big things that I've taken away in my career is just executing something, even if it's a small planting, and then observing it over time. And that tells us quite a bit. So, and again, you want to be able to access the entire area of the property. So those are a couple of tips you want to keep in the back of your mind. Another tab that is very useful on the assignment boards here is there'll be a resource tab, and these are really specific to the lesson. So do keep your eyes open for that. There's 2 main areas for resources. One is going to be the assignment board itself, and the other is going to be in the template file, and we're going to take a look at that in 1 minute. So again, you can go through these resources. In this case, we have some design sitemap resources. We also have climate resources inside and outside of the US. I believe the whole class here is in the US, so that makes it a lot easier for searching climate-related data. And then the last tab here is really about submission how to make a copy of the Google Slides. We're going to go over that right now. And then how to share your report. Those are two items that are important. Let us take a look at the template file itself. So for some of you, this may be a bit of a repetition because you are familiar with Google Documents, but for many, it probably won't be. So if we go back to the lesson 1 assignment page here, and we click on that template file, that is going to bring up this file, and it has a name at the top. It's an active master, and you want to make a copy. So it's telling you right out of the gate that this is view only. You're not going to be able to do anything with this file. Okay, so very easy to copy. We just go under File, and we go Make a Copy, and we're going to do the entire presentation. So when we do that, it's just going to ask us for a name. So I'm just going to leave it at this. It's a copy, but you know, most of the time you're going to put your name there. Let's do that. And I'll probably get rid of the latter part of the title here. So once you've done that, you can just hit make a copy. And now it will take a moment or so. And once you bring it up, now you'll notice that you're able to work with this file, and it's your own distinct file. Okay. Now, one area that, again, you have a lot of resources is within this template file. So if you go under the View menu and you just say Zoom Out, you'll notice that there are tutorials that surround most of these slides. Okay, not all of them, but most of them. And again, they're all very specific to the title, but I would highly recommend, if you get yourself into a bit of a jam, or you're not sure how to move forward, check out the tutorials on the template file itself, and as well as in the discussion board. And then if you can't see a path forward, please don't hesitate to go onto the Q&A discussion board and post a question there. And if you wish to have that answered during one of our meetings here, then you'll want to follow the link I sent you and end up on this OSU PDC Pro Q&A document. Now, the beauty of this is we're going to keep this going for the whole class and beyond, and all the questions are going to be placed on this document as well as the answers. So it'll be a great reference for you to look back at if indeed you have a similar question, which often is the case. So this is a great resource, and I really do highly recommend utilizing that. You can see we have a few questions here already that we're going to address. And so that is a quick tour of the discussion boards. And next, as you can see, next week we have lesson number 1 due. And it looks like we got 5 people that have submitted already. Then lesson 2 will come 2 weeks later, and in between that, we will have our Q&A meeting. Now, on the left side of the screen here, you've got a number of things. It may not be completely the same as what I'm looking at here, but if you at any time run into trouble, the technical support related, you're going to want to go down to this icon right here where it says Help. And if you press that button, you will be able to either contact Canvas Direct through a chat window, or you'll get a phone number to contact them. So anything technically related, you definitely want to talk to Canvas directly. If it's regarding the course itself, then certainly I am the guy you want to reach. The inbox here is sort of an internal messaging system. So whenever I send out a message regarding the Q&A meetings or any other announcement, that is what I will use. And that's an easy way to get a hold of myself. You can also just email me direct, and I have included that address in an earlier message to you. I'd rather not put that in today's meeting, just because this will become more of a public video and I get enough emails, so we will we'll not worry about that. So let's get back to the course here. And we'll go, you can see we've got a number of different teachers. There we go. All right, so that sort of gives us a brief overview of the platform here. So we've got a question here from Anthony. So do we keep access to the course materials after it's complete? You do, Anthony. You'll have access to this platform for as long as these servers are operational. So you get lifetime access. Now, the caveat is you won't be able to post any comments or anything beyond the closing date of the course, and none of the instructors go back into old courses. So it's really going to be resources only. You'll have all your content and all of the, again, the feedback and the resources sitting here, but you won't have the ability to communicate with anybody in the class. So that's, you know, the up and down side, but just the fact you have unlimited access to the content is fabulous, because as I'm sure you're starting to see, there's a lot of content to go through, and it's wonderful to have that as a resource afterwards, because in a lot of ways, the permaculture design process and this course, it's really a starting point. And at the end, you will have learned this design process, but it may take a little bit of time in order to go through a few different designs. If you plan on practicing this professionally, or even doing it for your friends for free, it'll take a little bit of time to go through and develop, well, we'll say your style. But I think the template file is a wonderful tool and resource that everybody's going to take with them at the end of the course, and it really does help streamline the process. Now, that file is very large. As you can see, we have over 150 pages, and that's before you're adding any additional pages. So the one thing I do want to show you here is how to share it. So once you have your assignment number or lesson number 1 done, so that would be the personal survey, the design site, where we're just going to be dropping in some images. It's you know, fairly basic here. We're not looking for a site plan or anything, you know, too detailed. And then the climate survey, a little bit about the climate of the project site. Once you have done that, you want to share that with the class, it's really easy. The best way of doing it is going up to the corner here and pressing the share button. And you'll notice that when it comes up, that it's going to allow anybody with this link to view it. And there's a few different, oh, this is unusual. There's a few different, well, the reason I'm having trouble here is I'm looking at the master, not the copy I made. There we go. All right, so if we do that again, you can see I have access, and it's private. So we go down to this button here and you say anybody with a link. And then generally you have 3 different roles here. You can have people view it, you can have people commentate, and you can have people edit. So I would recommend you just leave it at viewing. You could also have people comment there, whatever you prefer, no big deal, either or. And once you've done that, you just copy this link and say you're done. And then you would just go into, let's go to lesson 1, as if we're posting here. And right at the top is where you're going to post, even though it says a reply, this is where you're going to make your main post. So you could say, here's my work. If I can spell, there we go. And you can either paste in the link or you can highlight a word and hit the link button, and then we can copy that right in there. And then we just hit post, and then it'll show up down at the bottom here. When we go and click on that, it will load up the file. Okay, so it's a very, very easy way of sharing work. And we don't have to upload or download anything. So if you make a mistake, you can always delete this. Just make sure it's your work you're deleting, not somebody else's. I don't think you can do that, but that gives you a little idea about sharing your work and getting that template file going. And I think that is about it for our sort of Canvas orientation here. Does anybody have any questions at all regarding the platform and how to maneuver or how to post one of their lessons? If you do, you can type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself, whatever you prefer. If not, we will carry on here. Okay, so it looks like we're all good with that. So let us take a look at, just to give you a little heads up, normally with the Q&As, I'm going to spend probably half of the time going over the assignment that's coming up and discussing some of the things that I commonly see that may be unclear. One of the big things that I would recommend is people, when they are going to submit, as you take a look at this last tab here, the rubric. And the rubric is what I use to provide a guideline for grading. So if you ensure that you're covering off all of these items in the rubric, you know, you're going to do very well, because that's basically what I'm looking at. Some people have, oh, we have a question here from Grace. If you're using a different presentation tool, can you upload a PDF? Yes, you can. What you're going to find is the PDF, as we go through the course, is going to start getting bigger and bigger. And if you have a PDF that says, say it has 150 pages of graphics on it, you might find that's a little bit tricky. Can I just ask you a quick question, Grace? Can you unmute yourself for a second?
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Are you using, say, a different software?
Yeah, Keynote.
Okay. What you could do, you can still, I believe, you should be able to still use, let's see here. Because I know I've run into this challenge before where PDFs have become really cumbersome. One thing you could try and do is, if you're working in your Keynote, you should be able to copy and paste your graphics into the Google document here. I'm not sure if you have tried that or whether that's something you want to entertain. if it's possible for you to stay in the template file, you probably find that a little bit easier. And you can certainly edit anything you want within this. You don't have to stick to the exact format. So yeah, I mean, you can try the PDFs. They'll work for a few classes. And then the reason I say they get larger is because one thing we ask everybody to do is build on their template files so that lesson 2, when you get to that, you're going to be submitting your base map and your client's interview plus the previous lesson's work. So every lesson, you're going to have more and more and more information. And the beauty of that is we can then quickly reference some of the older work that you've done in case I need to take a look at previous info, whether it be your base map or whatever. So that's where you might get into a little bit of a challenge, Grace. But let me know how you work out with that. We'll figure out something that makes it easier for yourself. I do, having used key, gosh, is it key point? No. Sorry, my brain is brain is only half here today. Keynote, there you go. If you do, yeah, just, I'm not sure if that makes any sense, trying to integrate that into the template file here, but you can give it a whirl. And
yeah, I saw Dusty's comment too, and I have converted keynotes into PowerPoints before, and I think PowerPoints can be kind of dropped in. There's just like some formatting things kind of move around, and it's
yeah, PowerPoint can be a little bit tricky in terms of the working with Keynote. Your font can change and etc. But yeah, do try and drop it into the Google document here to just make it a little bit easier for yourself if you can. Yeah, give that a go. See how it works. This would be the easiest way forward. And let's just get back to where we are. There we are. Ah, there you go. Thank you, Dusty, for that. So Dusty's saying the formatting is not as big an issue in the Google Slides as it is with PowerPoint. So that's good to know. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Let us take a look at some of the questions here because I noticed there were a couple. And these do get priority on the call. So the first question, not sure who asked it. So ideally, we want you to put your name and your location in with the question if you can, because sometimes context does play into the answer. So what is the best website or resources to find statistics? So I'm imagining that is climate data. So I put a link right here, and that if we click on that link, we're going to go nowhere. All right. Where we should have gone is actually to discussion board number 2. And that's where we're going to start looking at our base map. And in the resources there, you're going to have a whole bunch of resources on how to make a scale bar, how to draw maps, and here are some of your map resources. So there are a lot of resources you can consider. Now, if we get to the climate end of it, that should be back in lesson 1 here. So there we go. So a lot of regional portals. So one of the things you may discover if you're in a smaller, if your project site is within a smaller town or area, you may have trouble finding climate data in your area. So just look for as close a town or city as possible close by. And often it'll be an airport. They often have weather data out of airport centers. So just look close by and do your best with that. It won't be exact, but that would be my suggestion. Some of these sites here are more broad for outside of the US, but you should be able to find what you need to here. And I will be updating the answer to that question when we're done here today. So that's where all the weather data is. And believe it or not, where I live, which is in Lanceville, BC, Canada, if you just put your location and just say climate data, you are going to get some pretty good hits here. And for myself, you know, I know that the province of BC and the federal government have a lot of good climate data that I could access. So there we go. So I think we covered that one. Second question here, Kristen had a good question. What do we do if our satellite view in Google Maps of Google Earth does not clearly show the site? So it's very wooded. That's a great question, and that certainly does happen. So you can do a little bit of both here. You can definitely include a satellite image because you are asked to do that on occasion. So let's just take your coordinates here. We're going to take a look at the site. And I just have to wait a few moments because I have Google Earth opening up here. And that's one of the reasons we ask for coordinates, so that instructors and other students can quickly jump onto Google Earth and see your location. If you don't want to share your project site location for privacy reasons, then please feel free to just message me the location, and we'll all be good with that. You don't have to necessarily share it. Most people do, but on occasion don't. So I'm just going to switch screens here quickly. All right. Still loading. Sorry about that. Got quite a few files kind of preloaded into this. There we go. Yeah, well, we can certainly see the reason for that question, this very heavily wooded lot. While I have you here, I'm just going to show you a couple of quick tips with Google Earth because it's a really useful tool, and I do use it for our work quite a bit. I can show you a few things I've done with that, but a couple of quick tips here. When you'll notice when you're zooming in and zooming out, the orientation seems to change. And when you're taking a screenshot in Google Earth, you always want to be directly overhead. So what's called a 2D overhead view. And to get that, all you have to do on your keyboard is hit the U key, and it'll put you directly overhead, which is super helpful because when you zoom in, as you can see, we're not overhead, but now we are. The other handy item is when you're zooming around a little bit, you're also going to potentially put yourself off of north up. And to get back there, you just hit the N key. So any base map work you do, you want to be directly overhead and you want to have north in the up position. Okay, and then I could basically take this, and you can see we have a scale at the bottom here, and I could take a screenshot of that, right? So for me, I just do a little box there, take that image, and then I can copy that into a document. So it's quite easy to use. This is a really interesting tool in that I'll just show you what we do with it. We use a software called QGIS where we get satellite data and we can create LiDAR imagery for projects that we're involved with, and we can get all the elevation information that we want without having to visit the site, and we can put in property boundaries, we can put in contours, and share this with our clients. So it also gives us the ability to put a slope maps. So the green are smoother. These orange areas are not areas where we could cultivate. And there's also many other things that we can do here. So even though we don't really use Google Earth for designing, we do use it for communications with our clients. So hopefully that has answered your question. Let us go back to where we were. All right. So I didn't answer the question fully. But what I meant to share is this. So often, if you did have a wooded area, you can use other types of maps to create your base plan. Now, this is a base plan that was created by a surveyor for a little urban project we did. And as you can see, we have contours. These are in 1/2 meter increments. We have existing trees located. We have existing elements. So there's a house, a carport, a garage, retaining walls. There's a shed here that's built off of the property slightly. So this is completely fine. This is a great starting point for a base plan. So you can use all kinds of different information for your base plan creation. So in this case, we had to get a surveyor in to do, there was some question about the property lines. So they were able to verify that. And you can see over here, there's a fence. So the property owners thought their property line went back to this point, and it did not. It was much tighter than they had anticipated, and that's really good information to know, especially if we are creating any elements that are on the permanent side, like fencing or retaining walls. We don't want to be building on somebody else's property. So they also did a topographic survey for us because we wanted to know how the topography was going to relate to any new retaining that we were going to use within that project. So again, this is another way you can start. What we often do as well on acreage that's not wooded, we will do a drone survey. So we'll end up with a really high resolution images, much better than what you find on Google Earth. And we also get contour data from that. So there's a number of different ways you can assemble a base plan. So if the long story short, if Google Earth is not going to cut it because of the wooded area, then do look for other types of maps in your area, and you might find a plot plan already. You also may find some information locally. I know where I live within the regional district of Nanaimo, I can basically find anybody's property lines and how it relates to a Google Earth image. So that is really helpful, although that is not going to be 100% accurate. It's not for legal purposes, but it does give us a place to start. All right, so back to, again, I'm going to fill the answers in here after the class. Grace, you had a question here. So regarding the climate survey, about only providing information for one column, a weather station or design site. Yeah, so 9 times out of 10, probably 99 times out of 100, you'll be getting data from a weather station. Not too many design sites have data that they can share or that they've been collecting long enough. And the nice thing about weather stations is you typically are going to get 20, 30, 40 years of data that you can then average, or that they would have average. So I would just go with the weather station, and that's nearest weather station to your locality. Yeah, that is how I would work that, Grace. So that's a good call on your part. And these are general, right? So they're generally giving us an idea of how much water is going to fall out of the sky, what kind of temperatures we're dealing with. They won't be specific to that particular project site, but that's okay. So you'll get enough data to move forward confidently with that. And believe it or not, one of the biggest parts of that whole puzzle in climate data is going to be your average rainfall data and what you're receiving month to month, as well as the extreme 24-hour rain event. So if you can find that, that's a good bit of info to have. Now, why is that? Well, when we're planning water systems, it's really helpful to know what one can expect. What has been the highest rainfall event that's ever happened in the area? Where I live, it's in and around 90 millimeters. So that's going to be close to 4 inches. Got another question here. 1 second from Chris, asking about the Google Earth layers. Those are layers that I created, Chris. Yes. Do you have any other recommendations? I certainly do, and I wasn't going to get to that today, but when we get to lesson 5, that's going to be critical information, and it's often not easy to get. If you were doing a design for a client, you're going to want to ensure you have as accurate info as you can get. For this class, I often suggest a pretty basic contour creator. It's called Contour Map Creator. I'll just put my address in here. It's not too hard to use. It's not going to be terribly accurate, but it gives us enough info for the exercises that we're doing. So let's say that we're right here, and we want to find out some data here. So we're just going to quickly go through, and we're going to set our intervals to feet, and I'm going to ask it for 2-foot contour data. And then what we do is we click in the top left and the bottom right, wherever we want to have the data taken. So let's say I want to capture that. And then you just say get data, and then it's going to produce contours here for me. along with a legend. So these are higher and this is lower. And I can take a screenshot of this and utilize this within my report. Now, this is not accurate. Like, this is contours generated from Google Earth, which are, they're only looking at sort of 10-meter contour intervals. So it does a pretty good job, but I wouldn't use this for a project that you're being paid for. I would be using something different, like a topographic survey or a drone survey. But here, this is what I would use. And if you get a little further down the rabbit hole and you learn softwares like QGIS, you can then find LiDAR data. In fact, where I live, there's a BC government LiDAR portal. So I can just jump on there and look for an address, and I got free data to play with. So those are a couple ways you can go about it. Again, I'll be revisiting this when we get to lesson 5, and that's where we really need to know the contours. And the reason for that is we will then need to know how water travels across the site, and contour data is going to tell us that. All right, so hopefully that helped you out there, Chris. Yeah, you said thank you. You are welcome. Let's go to Frankie's question here. How do we submit assignment 1? Well, I think I showed you that earlier. We'll quickly review that again. So if I'm on lesson 1's discussion board, I would just go to the reply button. That's right beneath the top here, and place some text in here. And then we could, I'm not sure if I still have that link copied. No, I don't. We would then go to our Google document and hit that share button, and then hit copy link. And we could just paste it right in there. Or you can highlight some text and paste it into that box as well, whichever you prefer. And then boom, you hit post, and there it is. So hopefully that helps you out, Frankie. And we got one more question here from Wayne. So that's a great question, Wayne. Can you recommend a microscope? I can, sort of. Let me see what I can do for you. I have taken the Soil Food Web program from Dr. Elaine Ingham. So I do have my own microscope. Now, I really hate microscopes, so I haven't been using it a lot as of late, but this is the kind of microscope you'd want to look at. I believe that's called a compound microscope, and I believe mine is 1,000 power. They're very simple. They're typically are inexpensive. Just to verify, but that microscope would be for looking at soil organisms, because when we look to do testing in lesson 6, which I'm going to zoom ahead here, when we're doing soil map and testing, we are strictly looking at sand, silt, and clay, the soil triangle, the soil texture, not the life within the soil. Okay, but we'll be talking about that. So the microscope's not going to help you here, but it would help you with looking at what soil life is present in your existing soils. Oh, and I had one more question here I did not So Frankie's question about the peer review. Good. Yeah, that's a very good question, Sabrina. So I'm going to delete my post. So let's say next Monday hits and I'm going to start providing feedback for people. I'm going to take a look at Mike's paper here, and what I do is a little different than some of the other instructors. So for lesson 1, I'll give you written feedback. So I'll take a look at, I'll go through this and read it carefully, compare it to the rubric, provide any feedback that I see that's pertinent. And I would add it right here. So right below Mike's post, I would just click on that reply button. And, you know, you can say whatever you wish and just hit post. And there it is. Okay. So that's basically how you would respond to those posts. Okay, so you'd want to say something meaningful, not just great job, of course, but that's how you would reply. Another way you could reply, this is the best way. Another way you could reply is through commenting on the Google document itself, but it's probably easier to just do it here on the discussion board. And so just, I see I got another question in the chat here, which I'll get to in 2 seconds. What I would recommend, sorry, I've already told you what I recommend. So in lesson 1, I'll give you some written feedback because this is the beginning of the class and it's pretty straightforward. But when we get to lesson 2, I'll start giving you video feedback. So what I do is I'll open up your document and I'll just go through it. I'll go through the lesson with you sheet by sheet and provide feedback on each sheet. And some sheets don't require a whole lot of feedback at all. But there are others when we get into mapping where I'll get a lot more detailed. So that's how I provide my feedback. And if for some reason you don't want video feedback, just let me know. Nobody has ever indicated that to me, but if for some reason you'd prefer it written, I can do that. No problem at all. I used to do that all the time. I just find that providing feedback when we're looking at your assignment is far more effective and gets the point across quite easily. So I do have another question here. Yeah, they're more pertinent to Google Earth, and you're interested in all those layers. Unfortunately, I opened up a can of worms there. Yes, the thing with mapping, it's such a huge rabbit hole. One thing I wanted to just throw at you today is you're going to notice during some of my comments in the course, I'm going to make reference to the Regrarian platform, which is this site here. This is the Regrarian Training Hub. Darren Doherty runs, and it's an amazing farm scale training program that's online. And part of it is they also offer training. So here you can get into a whole number of courses. Google Earth, they have a course on Google Earth. They have a course on QGIS. That's where I have gained a lot of my knowledge from, is these video-based QGIS programs are just fantastic. When I need to find out something that's really, really quick. Another hub here to check out when you have a chance is one of our instructors, John Bernakovich, runs regenerativliving.online, and he's got a number of online courses here. I've taken, gosh, 3, I think so far, 3 or 4, and just amazing. Some of them are self-paced. Some of them are live. One that's just started yesterday or Monday, actually, was Coppice Agroforestry. So lots of really cool resources out there. So let's get back to the chat question here. Yes, that's right, Christy. There's no formal criteria. You're just going to want to comment on somebody's work. And I would say you'd want it to be meaningful. You know, the more interaction, this is the challenge with this platform is because it's online. You know, you don't really have to engage that much if you don't want to, and that's fair enough. But I would encourage everybody to look at everybody's assignments. And that's the one way I have learned a lot over the last couple decades is looking at other people's work. Not only students' work, but for a long time, well, for a number of years, I was a commercial estimator and project manager, and I got to see 5 or 6 landscape architects' drawings every week. And that was a huge learning experience. So that's where you'll find a lot of really cool resources, is just everybody else's work. You'll find things you like, you'll find things you don't like. And a lot of it for me during that time frame was, how do I graphically depict something? Because I can see it in my mind, but how do I get it onto paper? And that's part of this course, is not only knowing the design process and learning that itself, it's also how to depict that on paper. And that is very much a long-term journey. You're going to learn some basics in this program, but one of the things you will quickly realize is that the tools we have here are very, very simple, and they are for a reason, a good reason, and that is so that you don't get basically stopped in your tracks trying to learn some software. We're trying to make this as easy as possible so that your focus is mainly on the design process, right? The software I use for my landscape work, one of them is called Vectorworks Landmark, and that it's an expensive software. It takes a long time to learn. I will be showing you examples of some of my work and my wife's work during the class, just to, you know, as out of interest. But I was really lucky that I discovered it a couple of decades ago, and we've stuck with it. But it took me a couple of years to learn. And this was before the advent of online education. This was way back in the late 1990s. So now it's very easy to get tutorial information and info online. So yeah, so that's just kind of a little bit of an overview of the course and what it's all about. You'll probably find it's pretty intense in that there's quite a bit of content to go through. Try your best not to get too far behind, because I do find when people get more than a couple of weeks late, you know, it gets harder and harder for them to catch up. So it's not as much fun. So Chris has to go. Thank you very much for being part of the meeting, Chris. Really appreciate it. I am going to just stop share here. Yeah, so this can be quite a fun journey. And yeah, it's a matter of just staying current with all of the content and the information. So if you find yourself getting falling behind, we do have a little break in the middle of the course for a couple of weeks, and that does give people an opportunity to catch up. But you'll probably find that you get the most out of the course if you're able to stay kind of in the current moment. Yeah, so that just gives you a little bit of a heads up. Thank you, everybody, very much for being part of today's meeting. Does anybody have any questions before we go here and call it a day?
No questions, just saying thank you for the time and appreciate the breakdown.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here. I really enjoy the Q&As and happy to see so many people here today. Thank you very much for all your efforts, and look forward to working with all of you over the next 20 weeks. So you take care, and we'll be chatting to you soon.
Jamie, Jamie, this is
Thanks, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
Jamie. I got one question about the.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was supposed to be, I sent you an email on it. I don't actually have property.
Yep.
A lot. I mean, I was, in my mind, I guess I didn't read the class close enough, but in my mind, I was going to do everything online, more theory than hands-on. But
Right. Well, if you don't have a property that you want to design, you've got a couple options. I've had a number of students that have used public spaces before. So they've looked at public parks as an option, a section of a park. One student I had took a park that had a community garden in it, and they extended their project site boundary, went well beyond that, and they wanted to add more to that particular project. So there are some options. Do you have any public parks around you that might be a good fit?
probably. Tell you what I was thinking though. There is a waste management system that's right near a body of water where I am in Tacoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I had started, because when I first started looking at permaculture a few months ago, I started looking at what they were doing, and that wastewater management system processes everything and then it puts it right into that water.
Right.
Right. So my thought was, why not use permaculture to design kind of like a park, but instead of putting that after it's processed directly into the water, put it into the ground and let it flow downhill to the water.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. There's no doubt that wastewater is a bit of an oxymoron in that once we add contaminants into water, the water has no ability to do any reclamation work. So you're quite right. Soil, compost, those are the sorts of things that are going to work. Yeah, that'd be very interesting. You might end up finding yourself in, yeah, it may be a little bit of a tricky design in that you're having to deal with a certain amount of output from that facility that a land-based system might not be able to handle. But yeah, I'd have to leave that with you. That would be probably one of the more interesting public spaces I'd seen done. So
Okay, well, I can give it a shot. Obviously, I'm a novice, very new at this, so I probably pie in the sky for me, thinking that, but it just sounded like a good idea.
Oh, it's a very good idea in a lot of ways. It may be really, really difficult for yourself. So as interesting as that sounds, I might suggest you try and step her down a notch. In other words, try and find some public space that even is just a big wide open lawn area that you could enhance as a first step. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I think the other way, as intriguing as it is, you'd end up opening up a lot of questions that would be, you know, technically really difficult to navigate. I don't want to dissuade you from it because I think that's a wonderful idea. I just don't know how beneficial it would be for yourself in this course. So yeah, I'll totally leave it up to you. It's your call. Yeah, I might suggest you try and find something different, but that's my my 2 cents worth.
Okay, well, I follow your lead. I mean, as well as everybody else. Thanks, Anthony, and the rest of you guys. It does make sense. It's as I talk to you guys and learn little bit by little bit, it does seem it is outside of my skill set. So
Yeah, and it just may not be a possibility.
Okay.
With the volumes that are,
Okay.
It's a great idea. Everybody should actually be doing their own. No, the reality is we should all be dealing with our own waste systems rather than centralizing them, but that's for another day. Right. And so, okay. Does that help you out?
Absolutely. And again, thanks to the rest of
Okay.
for providing feedback. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. All righty. Well, if there's no other questions, I will call it a day. Oh, we got one here from Max. Hey, Max.
Hi, Jamie. I just wanted to clarify. So, is the Google Slides template document, is that intended for us to be able to use that template professionally in future, if appropriately credited, or is that just for this course?
Well, that's a very good question, and you're quite welcome to use it professionally if you wish to do that. As we go through the class, I typically will show you what my wife and myself will generate as for design sheets for our clients. And what you'll notice when we get to the, get a little deeper into this, is we'll probably put out 7 or 8 design sheets for a client versus the 150 plus pages the template file has. So while it's a great way of, it's a great tool to navigate through this course, I think if you were to take it and to utilize that for a client, that you would be spending more time on the design than you had anticipated. So we condense everything in such a way where we can get away with less paperwork, right? Because each sheet takes X number of hours to create, and you got to be mindful of that. At least we do, because we provide fixed price quotes for people when they want design work. We'll give, okay, there'll be this amount of money because we know it's going to take us about this amount of time. So if it takes us double the time, well, that's too bad for us. But yeah, so that's the main reason. It's just there's so much content there, and we'd like to try and consolidate that a little bit. But we'll touch on that. But certainly the template is for that file is for you to do whatever you wish to do with it beyond the scope of the class. Yeah. And you may find you use bits of it, right? So I know years ago, before I started becoming an instructor with OSU, I had a client for rainwater harvesting, and she showed me a water layer, a water design she did with OSU. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Way to go. Like, I was really, really impressed. And that's essentially what we're going to be getting to as we go through each lesson. You'll see there may be 5 or 6 sheets in the lesson, but there'll be a map that's, you know, the center of it, the center of our attention, we'll say. Yeah. So if that helps you out, Max, that's great. And do you have any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. And again, really look forward to working with you all in the coming weeks. And we'll be reviewing your assignment 1 next Monday. And you take care, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks at the next Q&A if you're able to make it. Bye for now.